All right, I have a live stream of which I will copy and paste into Discord chat for my students. You want to follow along. As you know, we are deploying our full stack MERN apps to GCloud. It's not the only option. There's many options. This is the option that we've decided to work with in this class. Yesterday we built RESTful API, a singular RESTful API with many endpoints, API endpoints to perform CRUD operations on users in my Mongo database. So that's cool. And I've got that kind of out there on GitHub. And you know, here's the code that we kind of coded up yesterday, and you can kind of see I've already been pinging this. Now, the objective here is to redeploy this to GCloud. I've already deployed this once. And so, like all of you, if you did your labs and completed them successfully, you should be able to go to council, something like that, council.cloud.com. And you should be able to see that you have a project ID. And the way that the tool that we're using here is called Cloud Run. So where you actually find the running app is if you click the hamburger menu, you scroll down, Cloud Run, and here you click on the Lawn Connect service, right? Express runs just as a service in the background of your machine, of the server, if you will. And here we go. So this is live on the internet. I can copy and paste that URL into my phone, onto your computer, any internet connected device, and this is what will come up. It is just a dummy front end without even a working Bootstrap nav bar. That's not important, but what is important is we got our front end there, and I believe it had some mock data. So if you kind of manually type in these routes, these are express routes, and they serve up some dummy data, right? That's the old. That's where we came from, and we migrated that. Elsewhere now. So now we're hitting a Mongo database, and working with actual persistent data. The data is not resetting every time the server reboots. Okay, so the big benefit here is we're not working with data in memory or RAM. We're working with data in a persistent database, which is cool. So yesterday I added a couple of variables to our .env file, and this env file is, it holds, a lot of times it holds sensitive information. Maybe it holds passwords or keys, API keys. And so you really don't want this env file. Typically you don't want it on a public repo. Okay, the other day I was just coding along, and I hard coded an API key into my source code, and I tried to push it to GitHub, and GitHub wouldn't even allow it. GitHub threw a flag, threw up an error like, hey, you're not even allowed to put an API key in your source code like that. you should put it in what's referred to as an environment variable. And these environment variables, they can exist in your production environment, but they also exist, like if you go on a Windows machine or a Linux machine, it's just the same. There are environment variables. These are variables that exist on your operating system level, right? So here's operating system level variables. Okay, so when we deploy to GCloud, it kind of is deploying to a virtual machine, and that virtual machine has environment variables very similar to this. So on GCloud, the best practice is to come into GCloud and configure your environment variables using, well, there's probably different ways to do it, but I bet you, if I start searching for system, that's not going to give it to me. So set environment variable GCloud, right? So what are the button clicks to do that? So here's a service, and here you could do it in the actual. That's one thing. To update an existing service or replace, GCloud run services, update. Okay, so GCloud run service, update service name, set environment variables. So that's an interesting one because we have an existing service. I can say GCloud run services, update service name. And then like I have a DB name and I have a Mongo URI. Those were the two variables, and I had a port of 8080. And those are kind of like, the port would be assumed. So let's see, to update existing services, to add or modify without removing others. So this would replace all variables. Well, I don't really have any variables that were relevant anyways. So my understanding is that we could push environment variables, this .env, and I think, and I've done this before where I use environment variables in my source code, and then GCloud can read the .env file, and I believe it'll make its own environment variables. If it doesn't work that way, the best practice, and again, I don't believe that's best practice, just kind of keeping these in here like this for GCloud. I think my understanding is we need to make those variables on the virtual machine that is ultimately running when and hosting this service. Now, and look, here's the GCloud configure environment variable for services, set environment variables. So there is an interface for doing this, right? So this is probably easier than the command line. This is the GUI way of doing this. And you can kind of see from here's a GUI, right? So the name of your variable. So you go in the Google console, click on Cloud Run. So we've kind of done that. So just to kind of get there before so we clicked on Cloud Run, select the services from the menu. So we're already there. There's our services. Click Deploy Container. And I've done this before. It's just been a while. So I got to figure out, okay, so click Deploy Container to configure a new service. Edit and deploy new revision. I'm not going to actually do this right now. If you are configuring an existing service, click the service and then click the service. which is looks like we've done that. Deploy It's in here somewhere. If you're configuring a new service, click that. Click the container tab. Okay, overview. Let's go back to services. Let's click on that. You guys now see when I prep a lecture versus when I don't prep a lecture is a little bit less efficient. And maybe that's a good thing. Because you appreciate your prep more. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because if I prepped this, I would have known exactly where to click. It's in here somewhere. Okay, that looks like maybe, let's see, revisions, no, source. Triggers, networking, security. Oh, okay. Well, here's the edit and deploy new revision. That's what I was looking for. Okay. Okay, click the service, edit and deploy new revision. And haha, we're getting somewhere. See this? Variables and secrets. Here's environment variables. Paste an env file into the name input field and populate environment variables in bulk. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to redeploy my source code with that env file just hanging out in there. And then if it works, then okay, cool. I mean, we don't need to actually come in here and configure environment variables through the GUI. Even though I still think maybe we should. Now, that's just, okay, so we now know how to do that in GCloud. One more thing. We're ready to redeploy. Like I'm ready to go to the terminal and see, run the command and redeploy. I'm kind of curious. I want a static URL. I don't want this URL to be dynamic. So this URL right here, notice it ends in 3000.
Well, that's what you put on there, right?
No, all I just gave it a name, and it kind of auto-generated this. I gave it the lawn connect -service name, and then it generated that random number at the end, and then it put the rest of the URL there. See, I just gave it lawn connect -service. That's the name that I gave it. And I'm just going to redeploy it without worrying about that right now, but I do want to pay close attention to that and see if that URL is dynamic and changing or if it's static and staying the same. Okay, so these are things I'm going to be paying attention to because I want that URL to be static and staying the same. Okay. We found it. No big deal, just a couple clicks. GCloud run deploy. That's the command, right? GCloud run deploy service name --source dot is kind of the command I'm going to run to redeploy to GCloud. And as we always do, see what breaks. Now you want to make sure that your project is configured, right? So GCloud configure project, right? GCloud config set project to the project ID. So if you got multiple projects, I have multiple projects, you need to change your project in your terminal to make sure you're deploying to the right place. GCloud config set project ID. Now I already know what my project ID is, right? So if I go back to Cloud Run overview, actually back all the way out to here, there's my project ID. So here, GCloud config set project ID. Make sure there's no hyphens or anything. GCloud config set project ID. And I'm pretty sure this was already the case from last time, so not really that necessary. And keep in mind, I should be authenticated to my GCloud in this terminal, so it knows what I'm talking about, and it does. It says updated the property, so that command worked. Okay, so the project is set. Now I'm ready to run GCloud run deploy service name. So GCloud run deploy service name. We named it the Lawn Connect service. Again, you can kind of come into here into Cloud Run and see what you named it right here. Lawn Connect, all lowercase hyphen service. Lawn Connect service. And that's really all you need. That hyphen source dot says, hey, use this as the root directory. So that's kind of a nice little additional switch to throw on there. Hyphen source, and then dot meaning this is the root. So double hyphens source, and then this directory is the root. And let's see what breaks. I set it to central. So let's go US Central 34 is physically the closest region to us. Okay. So if my database calls work, that means that the .env file plays nice with GCloud. And again, I've done this before, and I've done it both ways, where I've used source code env files, and at times I've had to actually go into GCloud software and configure those environment variables separately to get things to work. And this is always a waiting game. I will tell you, this is probably my least favorite part of this class, because when you're having deployment issues, which deployment's not easy. Like, I want you guys to realize this, and I've said this before, deployment's a whole nother level of troubleshooting. It never works the first time. Like, programmer complaining 101 is, it works on my machine. I don't know. Why doesn't it work on your machine? Like, you hear that all the time, right? But in the world of LLMs and in the world of Claude Code and ChatGPT and all this stuff, where coding is becoming more automated in many cases, these kinds of skill sets where you're not just running on local host, you're running on production, right? We got to get there. We got to get our code into production, and that will separate you from everyone who's just running on local host, right? So deploying is tough. It always comes with troubleshooting and figuring things out you've never had to troubleshoot before. I still don't have confidence in this, and I've done it for years now. I still don't have confidence in this. If it works, I'm always pleasantly surprised. And it's worth it. It's hard, and it's worth it. That's the message. Cool. So now, look at that. My service URL is the same. I like that. It worked. It didn't give me an error message. Let's test. And we see that Brody was here. Now let's see if I can get users out of my database. So I did wire up API companies, and I didn't change any of that. That's not my database. /API/users though. Internal server error. Okay. So localhost, it works on my machine. If I run this on localhost, clear the screen, npm run dev, here we are on localhost. It's ingesting my env file. Here on localhost, if I go /API/users, we got one user back. But when I go here, it says internal server error. Now, I'm fairly confident this is my env files. I'm fairly confident of that.
You have to change the number.
We have to set the environment variable files inside of this interface, the website. Now, maybe it's worth backing out here because this just says server error. That doesn't tell me any error message. Of course, everything in here is a log, and so I've actually found it useful in the past to kind of open up the logs and see what kind of error message I can extrapolate out of the logs. So let me click on here. Let's get in here. Dashboard maybe. Okay, so now I'm in the dashboard and I kind of see we are getting some API requests and Cloud Run, go to project settings, activity. Okay, so I'm getting into these logs. And okay, well this is interesting. Cannot read properties undefined of starts with on index.js. Okay, so that's an interesting, it's having, now this is on, it hit my route at get users, and then it went to, looks like line 28 in my database JS. So let's just kind of look at database JS and get users, because that definitely tells me more than what that told me. So let's go to database JS. This is my get users. Line 28, it's not really making a good connection to my database, right? And so let me give it a couple of environment variables. And like I was anticipating, it can't connect to the database. It's probably these environment variables. That's what I would have suspected. So I'm going to rip this over here. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go to GCloud run. I'm going to go to my service and edit and deploy new revision. And here's my environment variables. I'm going to add a variable. And really there's two important variables. Yeah, that's right. So there's the Mongo URI and there's the DB name. Now I do have a port and a debug. I don't think that those are important variables. I mean, obviously, the thing was up and running. I could actually get, remember the old date, I could get the companies or whatever it was. So the port was fine. I don't really need to debug anything on GCloud, so I'm not worried about those other ones. And one of these days I'll learn my lesson, and there's the Mongo connection string, and here is my DB name. So there's that. I'm going to click on, I think that's it. I'm just going to click on deploy. And it says deploying revision, creating revision completed, routing traffic completed. We're back up and running. That seemed easy. Now, just out of curiosity, if I click that and I go back into my, I'm gonna click back. So I click on this, variables. Okay, so now now they're there, right? That's good. Okay, so no one's as happy as me about this. I appreciate your
enthusiasm.
Yes, right. By the way, our React app has its own environment variables. This is just the back-end environment variables.
I have a question.
So getting those set properly is a whole nother kit and caboodle. What's your question?
The back end,
Check this out though. While you're thinking, check this out. I'm going to open up my routes from yesterday. And you can refactor using your, you can refactor this using your live URLs. Remember that? So let's log in, right? Because we should be able to log in now on with admin of Best Lawns. Is our only user. Admin. Now he is a hash password. So admin at bestlawns dot, was it com? Admin at bestlawns.com. Password 123456. And our backend API on GCloud is responding. We already knew that. But those routes, we made 4 or 5 routes yesterday. Oh gosh, that's still localhost. Come on, guys. Let me API users login. Now I should be able to log in via GCloud. Same difference, right? If I go to add a user, I can add a user on, I'm posting a new user. I'll add myself here. Same database, by the way. Localhost and GCloud are using the same database. Email is eagudmestead@rankin.edu. His role is a customer. The address is 36 36 Rankin Lane. I did first name. Last name. And a rating. Okay, so I'm gonna post a new user to my database as if they just registered, right? They registered as a customer. and I hit that, and I get a successful created at, I can go to my Mongo Atlas. I can connect in. I can go to my, whatever we called it, Lawn Connect users, and there's the new user I just created. I can, of course, I should be able to update my user with so if I go to update my user with a different, like a different profile, 316 Rankin Lane, and instead of localhost, we are going to the live. And look, if I can demonstrate the read, the update, the delete, or create, I don't think I need to demonstrate the delete. That's the easy one. User not found. Why is the user not found? Because that's not a valid user ID. Let's go back to get all users. Let's find this user ID and paste that in the URL. Now it says user updated successfully. And if I go to get my users now my address is updated. And of course, delete should also work. I'm going to stop there just for today. You guys have lab work to work on. That is creating your RESTful APIs with Mongo database for your issue tracker final project, right? And that's a substantial lab. It'll take you a while. Okay. These videos, I'm going to add them to the playlist. You can reference them. You can ask questions. You know, if you want to reference these videos, these live streams, they're going to be on the playlist for you. The next step, by the way, and I'm going to take this step with you guys tomorrow. The next step is to, just like we did the other day, we're going to read that into the front end. We're actually going to use Axios tomorrow, and we will read the database records into a front-end React app, and we will republish it to GCloud tomorrow. So that will be an operational. Of course, you got to get, then once you've got the reading of the users, well then now we're talking, because now you can register a new user. You guys can build a form to register new users. You can build a form to log in a user. Like, we've learned a lot in a short amount of time, and I'm excited to see what you guys are going to build. All right, I will go ahead and stop. That was a quicker one.